A couple of big weather systems showing up on that satellite loop. We've got one off the California coast, another in the Gulf, and an even bigger one out in the Atlantic. This will give you some idea what the Atlantic weather system looks like. A 990 millibar low, occluded with a triple point well to the south, a well-defined baroclinic leaf out there in the central Atlantic, and plenty of cold air advection following in its wake. This looks like a very stormy area here. I'm sure the shipping traffic is giving that a wide berth. Here's a look at temperatures around the world as of the last synoptic hour. 116 this afternoon at Acrobi's Falls. This is what it looks like on Google Street View. Definitely some very rocky and dusty terrain. And minus 46 at Oymyakon. This is what it looks like during the summer. Probably much different right now. Closer to home, here's what the surface map looks like this afternoon. We are kind of in between systems. We've got three of them knocking on our door, one out there in the Gulf, spreading a lot of rain into Florida. They do have flood watches in the southern part of the state, and we've got this other large weather system off California and another one sweeping through Washington. Let's go region by region, starting with the northeastern U.S. Well, what do we see here? We've got a warm sector working up through Michigan into Ontario, up into the 50s and even some 60s around Chicago. Now, there's a very important forecasting tip I'm going to pass along. Notice that right in this region right here, we've got warm temperatures, 50s and 60s. In fact, I would say 50 here is well above average. And as you go further northeast, it drops into the 40s and 30s. And cold as well up to the north, where there's a cool westerly wind. If we compare that to the Weather Prediction Center, they have a slightly different analysis. They've got the warm sector all the way up there towards James Bay. And I would argue that's probably a little bit too far north. We have to keep in mind that when we cross the warm front, we're transitioning from the warm air mass to the cold air. And this area here is definitely in the cool air, 30s and 40s. And this is much warmer down there in Michigan and Ontario. So those are very important details that you have to kind of follow as you go through the weather analysis picture. And with this area being rather close to that warm front, we do have kind of a mix of upper-level dynamics helping to produce a lot of this mid and upper level cloud, and even a few mountain waves across Vermont. In the southeastern U.S., we have a fully developed Gulf of Mexico frontal system. There's the main low pressure area south of Mobile, and that extends to a triple point just west of southwestern Florida. You can see the main cloud shield spreading out over the state, picking up an atmospheric river. Let's take a look at a conceptual model of a system that's similar to this. This shows the main stages of frontal development. The black lines are isobars, and the blue lines are thickness or isotherms in the lower troposphere. We're in this stage out there in the Gulf. That's that system south of Mobile, the triple point, and the warm sector. And most of that cloud and precipitation is spreading out over the warm front right there. So I don't have very much data out there in the Gulf, but I believe that this is occluded, so this may actually be incorrect, and we would be looking for that cold front somewhere off to the east, kind of like that, with a triple point west of southwestern Florida. So the weather analysis does kind of evolve as you go through the data. Anyway, looking at the radar, abundant precip in southern Florida, flood watches throughout eastern Florida, warnings for the beaches for dangerous surf conditions, 40-mile-an-hour winds, rip currents, and waves as high as 10 feet. The Weather Prediction Center does have a moderate risk for excessive rainfall for the Miami and Fort Lauderdale area today, and most of the marginal, slight, and moderate risks, those are going to be generally southeast of Orlando to Fort Myers. Most locations will get about 2 to 4 inches, some localized areas around Miami we'll get about 4 to 8 inches. And there's the surface analysis with gale warnings up and down the East Coast. And as you go further north, we get into some of that wet bulbing. Notice the dew points down in the 50s, 40s, and 30s. And as you precipitate into that air, you're going to get evaporative cooling. So those temperatures fall off down to 58 degrees at Columbus, 60 at Macon, and 62 at Atlanta. For the southern plains, we do have a ridge across that region. You can see the difference in the winds. We've got southerly flow through Oklahoma and Kansas and northerly flow in Louisiana and Alabama. In between, we find that surface ridge. The wraparound clouds moving through El Dorado, Longview, Lufkin, all the way down to Galveston. And those conditions will be clearing up tonight as that low progresses to the east. In Texas and Oklahoma, warm, 60s and 70s, and rather dry, dew points in the 30s and 40s. Then as we go further north, this area has been under downslope conditions for a few days now, so temperatures quite warm through that region. The surface analysis shows a warm front moving through Montana and Nebraska, and that gradient is coming out of the southwest, so this is certainly an area of downslope flow. High wind warnings and watches out for the higher terrain in southwestern Wyoming for tonight into Thursday. That's going to be west of Cheyenne to Chugwater and Douglas. Westerly winds gusting to 65 miles an hour are expected there. Winter weather advisories in the Sierra Madre range right there in southern Wyoming. 5 to 10 inches of snow above 9,000 feet expected on Thursday. And in Montana, we've got this Pacific system approaching. You can see the bend in the thickness contours. That's outlining where that disturbance is right there. So the conditions are going to go downhill in Montana. They're looking for 2 to 14 inches of snow in the passes and summits, winds to 40 miles an hour. And we're talking about today and tonight. And Canada has snowfall advisories down there around Cardston southward for up to 6 inches. And California enduring its own weather system, not really all that deep, but it is very broad. Have these spiral bands going all the way around it, and a couple of convective cloud lines here and there. And off the Baja California coast, some of that is in the form of thunderstorms, and that goes from about San Diego south through Tijuana and down along the coast. And there's a look at AWIPS as we record this, showing a lot of showers and even a few thunderstorms moving into San Diego and Los Angeles. This smudge right here, that's an area of lightning being detected by the GOES satellites. That looks like it's making a beeline into the Orange County region. There's outlooks on the surface chart. As I mentioned, that low is not very deep at all, 1,002 millibars, but the thickness gradient is very well defined. Some of the tighter thickness pack-in is right there, southwest of Los Angeles. And that puts the triple point just to the southeast right there, just west of San Diego. So no wonder this area is so dynamic. And as we go further to the north, this gets more into an occlusion, cold core type setup. Let's take a look at the GFS and get a different look at that. So here you go. Here's a schematic of the surface systems. There's our weather system out there. I may have that warm front a little bit too far north, but anyway, that does show the active area off of Southern California. It also shows our northwestern U.S. system and the weather system out in the Gulf. There's our water vapor imagery for this afternoon, showing a rather complex setup, although the polar front jet punching right into the back of that occlusion, the dry slot working into the Central California coast, and out ahead of all that in the warm conveyor belt region, thunderstorms moving into Baja California, and of course a few pops of thunder off of Los Angeles. The system in Washington looking more like a baroclinic leaf, and I may actually bring that surface low a little bit further to the west, more in line with that stronger dynamic lift. And indeed, that's what I had on the surface chart. However, on the schematic, it was just a little bit different, so I don't want to confuse you. There we go. That's probably a little bit closer to what we have at this time. And more significantly with that, some fairly stout cold air advection coming into Seattle, 41 degrees there with a north wind. And as we go further north, the air is not terribly cold in the Fraser River Valley, but as we go further north into Yukon, we do start picking up some sub-zero temperatures. Look at that. We go from 18 in north central British Columbia to minus 13 at Watson Lake. So we are getting into much colder air developing in those northern valleys. And of course, the region up north is getting into the long winter night, not very much sunshine at all. So it's a good setup for radiational cooling. Plenty of weather in Alaska. We've got a well-developed 970 millibar low southwest of Alaska, and a different weather system out there around Kodiak. There is a winter storm warning in western Alaska, basically between Nome, Bethel, and Fairbanks, but not including those cities. Probably comes out a little bit further, kind of like that. They're looking for 7 to 10 inches of snow, mixed precipitation south of McGrath, and that winter storm warning goes all the way back to the area just north of the Alaska Range. South of that, winter weather advisories today, tomorrow, and Friday, looking for 10 to 25 inches of snow in the Susitna Valley. And then heading off to the east, pretty quiet up there in Nunavut, but temperatures rather mild, 21 degrees. I think that's going to be Arctic Inlet. Can't remember all those station names. The truly cold air, minus 20 up there around Alamir Island, sub-zero all the way back to Banks Island, and then we pick up 19 there at Sauk Harbor. All right, heading south, another weather system in Hudson Bay, so they've got a little excitement of their own. And as we can see here, the temperatures are mild once again. Teens on the western shores and near freezing out there in Quebec. This time of year, temperatures could be a good 20 to 30 degrees colder. Here is our jet stream setup. Polar front jet across Alaska supporting that Gulf of Alaska system. Coming down the backside, another trough supporting our weather system in the Bitterroot Range. And that extends eastward out towards the east coast, and that in turn supports that weather system moving through Quebec and New York. So quite a bit of activity going on. And then we've got that cutoff low off California, this branch right here supporting the Bear Clinic system off of California. And of course this other trough right here, not very strong at all, but providing modest support for the Florida weather system. So yeah, quite a bit going on. So why don't we do a cross section? We're going to go from here through the center of that cold core low and through this jet stream and end it right there around Baja California. So looking at our cross section, the center of the cold core low is going to be about right there. You can see those potential temperature surfaces, they bulge upward in the center of that cold core low, reflecting the cooler temperatures within that. And you can see the wind field indicated by the shading. There's the jet stream. And I don't have the jet pictured on the other side, but it is definitely present, flowing out of the page, whereas right here it's flowing into the page. So here we've got 100 knots. Again, it's not colored, but it's coming out of the page, and then 100 knots going into the page. And right in between, that's where our upper level low is located. So we do see some of the frontal surfaces way out here off the coast of San Diego. And this shows that this is mostly an upper level front. Some of the stronger tilting of those potential temperature lines is in the mid and upper levels. And as we move a little bit further into our day, putting this production together, the thunderstorms moving onshore from Long Beach down towards Oceanside. And a few thunderstorms also appear to be showing up near Malibu. So here's the forecast sequence looking at the GFS. Here's our area of showers and thunderstorms moving inland. Looks like we got a secondary area of development right there along the occlusion and our main system offshore. This is how things are going to progress into this evening. Some bands working at the San Francisco area right there. The dry punch moving into Santa Barbara. And gradually that spreads over most of Southern California later this evening, so we should see a reduction in the precipitation. Meanwhile, precipitation in the San Francisco-Sacramento area continuing to move northward, and the Sierra Nevada is picking up some of that as well. The main low remains well off into the Pacific, and only by early Friday do we get the next band. I mean, here's one weak one around San Francisco tomorrow night, but looks like this one makes its move sometime around midday on Friday into the San Francisco and San Jose area, and then the rest of it heads into the coast much weaker. And I almost forgot to mention this right here. Looks like a little bit of development right there around San Diego for late on Friday, and intensifies as it moves inland. And the upper level dynamics, those are part of the equation. Let's go into tomorrow and on Friday. And we see the flow out there in the Pacific rather flat, although there's this one wave right there off of Los Angeles earlier during the morning. Another disturbance. Yeah, it's getting kind of troughy out there. This is indicative of a jet max making its way inland, cyclonic flow, and that's going to be a big quasi-geostrophic disturbance making its way inland. So there it is right there. That's going to be early on Saturday. Most of the stronger dynamics will be out ahead of it. You can see it rapidly crossing the Four Corners area during the day on Saturday, and then breaking down that ridge in the central U.S. So we are going to see some changes in the weather in the central U.S. going into the weekend. Well, out there in the southwestern U.S., another trough coming down the backside. Let's see where that's coming from. Yeah, it's going to be this thing breaking up finally. The main low working inland. All right, so there it goes down into Tucson for early Sunday, and then out into Texas for Monday. And then it couples with this troughiness in the central U.S. associated with cold air coming down from Canada, and a jet max down the backside, and that usually spells deepening. Okay, going into Tuesday, yeah, that's deepening for sure. There it is right there. Heights drop into 558 decameters, another trough up to the north. So this is all really coming together for the eastern U.S. Jet max down the backside and rotates around the base rather quickly. And that's probably going to support a strong coastal system at some point. So putting that together, you can watch your favorite part of the country. It's really too much to go through for everybody, but yeah, there's wave number one right there, and we're going to see a couple of pieces of energy start to come out going into Friday and Saturday. So anyway, we've got some cold air coming out of Canada, not very cold, but it will make a difference in parts of the northern U.S. Meanwhile, the Florida system packs its bags and heads northeastward. Cold front continues to march south for Friday morning, and out on the California coast, this system starting to break up, and of course the main piece of energy moves into the southern U.S. for Saturday and Sunday. So that's going to be the very end. You can see that southern piece crossing the Four Corners area for early Sunday. And here's how it shapes up around the rest of the U.S. Pacific weather system entering Texas for Monday. In fact, that was it right there, just very briefly, with an associated precipitation field. Things really coming together in the North Rocky Mountain region area, and some strong cold air advection in the northeastern U.S. So quite a bit going on. And yeah, that cold air plunges into the southern U.S., 543 decameter low right there, so it could be maybe some snow in Amarillo for Monday. This strong system comes together in the south central U.S. That'll be moving up into the northeastern U.S. Strong upper level dynamics associated with that. There's our coastal low. So we're going to have a lot to look at for next week. Okay, and that will do it for this edition of Forecast Lab. Hope you have a great Wednesday evening, and we'll see you back here on Friday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.